All right, let's jump right in. We're going to talk about something that's like the absolute backbone of all information security. It's behind everything, your bank account, your company's most guarded secrets, you name it. We're talking about the CIA Triad.
Okay. Before you start frantically unplugging your servers and looking for listening devices, let's get one thing straight. We're not talking about that CIA. No spies, no covert ops. The CIA we're digging into today is the absolute cornerstone of Infosec, and honestly, getting a handle on it is what stands between you and a full-blown digital disaster comet.
So what exactly are these three pillars? It's pretty straightforward, really. First up, you've got confidentiality. That's all about keeping secrets. Then there's integrity, which means making sure your data is accurate and hasn't been messed with. And last but not least, availability, which is just, making sure you can actually get to your stuff when you need it. These three together, they're like this protective force field around all your important information.
All right, let's dive into the first piece of the puzzle. This is the one that always feels the most like a spy thriller. We're talking about confidentiality. It's all about the art of keeping secrets, well, secret. And I gotta say, this analogy is just perfect. Think of confidentiality as your own personal digital bouncer. His one and only job is to stand at the door and make sure that only the people on the VIP list get to see your data. He's there to toss out the hackers, the nosy colleagues, anyone who shouldn't be snooping around.
So how does this bouncer actually do his job? Well, his go-to tool is encryption. This is what turns your data into total nonsense, like a cryptographic word salad, using stuff you see all the time, like AES and TLS. Then you've got access controls. Your passwords, your biometrics, your multi-factor authentication. That's basically the bouncer's clipboard, the guest list, to prove you are who you say you are. And this is a big one. You can't forget physical security. I mean, what good is the world's best digital lock if a thief can just, pick up the entire safe and walk out the door with it?
Which brings us to this story, and man, does it drive the point home. You can pour millions into encryption, have all the fancy software in the world, but it's all for nothing if someone can just waltz in and physically steal your server. A single brick. A brick took down a multi-million-dollar security setup. It's hilarious, yeah, but it's also kind of terrifying when you think about it.
So what can you actually do? How do you put this into practice? First off, encrypt everything. And I mean everything. Not just when it's sitting on a hard drive, but when it's in transit too. Next, you have to train your people. They're your first line of defense, so teach them not to fall for those phishing scams. Third, and this is crucial, use the principle of least privilege. Seriously, your receptionist doesn't need access to the company's financial records. And finally, audit like a conspiracy theorist. Trust no one. Check who's accessing what and when and why.
Okay, so we've got our secrets locked down. Let's move on to the second pillar of the triad, integrity. And this is a whole different ballgame. It's not just about keeping data hidden, it's about making sure the data you're looking at is the right data. Think about it. Data integrity means you can actually trust your information. It means it hasn't been fiddled with, it hasn't been corrupted, and it hasn't been creatively adjusted by somebody up to no good. Without it, things get messy. A bank balance could magically shrink, a patient's medical chart could get changed. Suddenly, your data is completely unreliable, and if it's unreliable, it's pretty much useless.
So how do we keep our data honest? Well, we've got some pretty cool tools in the toolbox. There are these things called hash functions. You've probably heard of SHA-256. They create a totally unique digital fingerprint for a file. If a single tiny little bit of that file changes, the entire fingerprint changes. It's like an instant alarm bell for tampering. Then you layer on things like digital signatures and version control for even more trust. And of course, the granddaddy of them all, backups. Your ultimate safety net to get back to a clean copy when everything hits the fan.
And if you're sitting there thinking, how much damage can a small change really do? Think again. This story is the perfect and painful example of an integrity failure. A single comma. One misplaced comma in a file triggered a chain reaction that cost a company millions. That's not just a typo, that's a catastrophe. And it shows you just how critical integrity really is.
So listen. The takeaways here are non-negotiable. You've got to use hashes to check your data's integrity. You need to lock down who can actually edit the information.
Keep detailed logs, audit trails, so if something does go wrong, you know who did what and when. And please, for the love of all that is digital, back up your data, back it up again, and then test those backups. Because an untested backup, that's not a plan, that's just wishful thinking.
Okay, so we've got our data locked up tight, and we know it's accurate. Awesome. But what good is any of that if you can't actually get to it when you need it? And that brings us to the final, and I'd argue often the most forgotten piece of the puzzle, availability.
I mean, think about it. If your customers can't get to your website to buy something, or your own team can't access the files they need to do their jobs, your business just stops, dead in its tracks. Availability is what makes all that secure, accurate data actually useful. Without it, you've just got a very expensive, very secure digital ghost town.
So, keeping the lights on is all about planning for the worst. The keyword here is redundancy. That means having backup servers, backup power, backup networks, all just waiting to jump in the second something goes wrong. Then there's your disaster recovery plan. That's your step-by-step guide for when the zombie apocalypse hits your data center. And of course, you've got proactive stuff, like DDoS protection to fend off those massive bot attacks, and regular patching to plug up holes before they become big problems.
And you know, sometimes the thing that takes you down isn't some elite hacker in a dark room. It's something way more ordinary. This story is an absolute classic. A janitor, a vacuum cleaner, and one unplugged server cord. That's all it took to crash an entire network. It just goes to show you, availability is fragile. You have to protect it from everything, from cyber attacks down to, well, the cleaning crew.
So the action plan here is absolutely vital. You need to make redundancy your best friend. Build it in from day one. Monitor your systems like a hawk, 24/7, so you can spot trouble before it becomes an outage. Patch everything like your life depends on it because, let's be real, your business probably does. And last, have that disaster recovery plan and make sure you've tested it. You don't want to be reading the instruction manual for the first time when the building is on fire.
All right, so we've seen the 3 pillars. But what happens when you just ignore all of them? To really see how this all comes together, or falls apart, let's walk through a little cautionary tale. It's a bit satirical, but honestly, it's scarily realistic. Let's talk about the catastrophe at Acme Corp.
Act 1, the confidentiality catastrophe. It always starts with something small, doesn't it? A terrible password policy and 0 employee training. So our intern, let's call him Dave, clicks on a phishing link he shouldn't have. And just like that, boom, confidentiality is out the window. All their customer data is now for sale on the dark web and their reputation is toast.
Act 2, the integrity implosion. While they're still reeling from the first hit, their data integrity just completely collapses. Some developer, trying to be helpful, goes in and fixes the database manually. The result? The company starts selling 10,000 widgets they don't actually have. And to pour salt in the wound, ransomware encrypts all their backups. So there's no going back to a clean state. It's gone.
And now for Act 3, the availability apocalypse. This is the final blow. They're running their entire operation on one single ancient server. No backups, no redundancy. And of course, it picks the biggest sales day of the year to finally give up the ghost. The website goes down, customers are furious, the business is literally offline, hemorrhaging cash and trust by the second. It is a complete and total failure of all 3 parts of the CIA Triad.
So the moral of the Acme Corp story is painfully clear, right? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability, they're not just buzzwords on a whiteboard. They are the absolute practical bedrock of digital survival. All the tools are out there. The principles are clear. So the only real question left is, are you going to use them or are you Dave? Don't be Dave.